Hi everyone, this is Tammy, owner of Worthy, Worth It, and Priceless, and today's podcast is titled Don't Hesitate. So, for you that may or may not know, it was like a couple of months ago, I talked to Jagged Edge on their radio show. At the time, it was called A Jagged Storm, right? So, what you don't know, there is backstory to that story, and that they don't even know. So, a part of that is they had a show, I believe it was on September 10th. And right after that show, God told me to call them. And for you all that don't know as well, I have 3 books. One of my first book was called Love and Relationships, and there's a game in that book called No Lip, No Debate. The no debate part, I got that from one of Jagged Edge's songs. It was inspired by that, so that's the whole thing. So right after that show, God told me to call up there and basically tell them that. And I'm like, why didn't you just have me do that? Like on this show, like you could have just told me and I could have just called them like right now or whatever. So anyway, long story short, so like the whole week I'm nervous, I have anxiety. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm gonna talk to Jagged Edge or I might talk to Jagged Edge. I didn't know what was gonna happen, but I knew what God told me to do. So with that being said, the day comes. They usually have their shows on Thursday. So what happens? So you would think that since God told me to call up there, that everything would be smooth. No, not at all. Like what happened was there was a storm in Atlanta. So the whole show, Jagged Edge, like the audio was messed up. They were going in and out because, like I said, there was a storm in Atlanta, so it kept kicking out the power and everything. And it came to the time where they were saying they're going to take calls. So I'm like, okay, all right. So I pushed the button because they were on this app. So I pushed the button to talk to them. Cool, right? No, the power goes out. And it's like, oh my gosh. So the power goes out and Jagged Edge is gone. And I'm like, dude, God, you told me to call up here. But I calmed it down, so whatever. So Jagged Edge comes back on. Long story short, I pushed the button and you can listen to the podcast. It says I talked to Jagged Edge and you can hear the whole interview. But the nuggets from that is you can't hesitate. And the reason I say that is from example. Had I hesitated, I would never had the opportunity because what ended up happening, this was like their 3rd show, but what ended up happening, they changed the format of the show and it seems like every time they had an episode or a show, it was always like literally there was a storm almost every episode and it got so bad that they couldn't hear whoever was calling. We couldn't hear them. It was horrible. And what ended up happening is eventually they ended up getting off the app altogether. And that was that. So had I not did it at that time, I probably would have never had another opportunity. And as well, sometimes you're like, well, God, you asked me to do this, and then there's, once again, like I stated, there was a storm. But the part that I didn't tell you was that God seemed to have calmed the storm by the time I talked to them. There was no interruptions. They never got like it never got messed up or anything. Nothing. Like it was smooth sailing. And that's the thing. If God has asked you to do something, He will provide a way for it to happen and for it to happen smoothly. So it's something that you shouldn't actually worry about. And like I said, I know that you might be nervous because I was definitely nervous up there calling them. But at the end of the day, if God tells you to do something, He's going to provide a way for it to happen. So a lot of times we're like, well, you know what, maybe I can do it another time. It's not like a stoplight. It's not like, okay, as soon as God tells you to do something, you have like a window or you think that you might have a large window for it to happen. And that's not usually always the case. God may make another way for it to happen, but if He's asking you to do something at that time, will be great for you to do it at that time, and just use what I've stated as an example, because had I not did it, I probably would never had the opportunity again. So that's a once in a lifetime chance. So if God has told you to do something, I know you might be afraid. I know that you don't think that it's in you to do, but He trusts you and He knows that you can handle it. And He will give you the words to say if it's something that you have to say. He will allow your legs and your feet to move and all that stuff, whatever He's called you to do. Know that He has placed everything on the inside of you to be able to handle it and complete His work. So with that being said, do not hesitate if God asks you to do something. He knows exactly what you can handle. With that being said, once again, always know that you have worth, you have value, God loves you, I love you. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast or watching video, all that good stuff. Until next time, always know that you are worthy, worth it, and priceless.